On the heels of the abduction of more than 100 girls in Dapchi, Yobe State, Nigeria is grappling with yet another crisis, this time in the health sector. Since the beginning of the year, Lassa fever has claimed 90 lives in more than 1,000 suspected cases. Even the health workers are not spared. 4 of them have died. More worrisome is that the predominant age group affected is the productive one of between 21 and 40. Now the World Health Organization is scaling up its support. Tonight we seek answers to the recurring questions. How can this epidemic be contained? My name is Rmk On Newsnight, and the Newsnight begins right now. But first, let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Angola oil companies a no-go to restart oil production in Iraq. A long-lost iconic Nigeria portrait sold for a record £1.2 million. And in Kenya, a short film is vying for the Oscars. Increased public awareness is now key in Nigeria, with the reported cases of Lassa fever spreading across the country. Nigeria's Center of Disease for Control reported 54 new confirmed cases from 8 states between the 19th and 25th of February. Edo State had the highest number of 21 cases, followed by 18 cases in Ebonyi State. Ondo had 9, Nasarawa 2, and 1 each in Plateau, Kogi, Imo, and Ekiti states. 10 new deaths were confirmed from 5 states: Ondo, Edo, Plateau, Ekiti, and Ebonyi states. So far this year, more than 1,000 suspected cases have been reported with 90 deaths in 18 states of the country. And according to a media report that was filed on Vanguard a few hours ago, no fewer than 7 children have been reportedly killed by outbreak of meningitis in Jaja village in Gangara ward in GBA local government area of Katsina State. Also, another 104 children were said to have been affected by the outbreak of whooping cough in 3 villages of Bugaje wards in the same local government area. No death has been recorded yet. Now, for a situation report on the Lassa fever epidemic, I'm now being joined by Dr. Chikwe Eyikwazu, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us. Now, WHO reports is quite, mind-boggling, and sometimes the figures that they come up with is staggering. Now, they said that this is the worst outbreak of Lassa fever in Nigeria, as 72 deaths are already confirmed. Now, what is responsible for this new outbreak?
Okay, so firstly, to say it's not a new outbreak. We have seen cases of Lassa fever throughout last year. We've seen an increase from early this year. The figures are actually released by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, and we release those figures every week to keep Nigerians informed of the situation and what we're doing about it. So together with our partners, WHO being the leading one, this week what has happened is we have intensified our response, and which is why you're seeing a lot of publicity around it. And the critical milestone that was passed last week was when we got to 317 cases, meaning we had more confirmed cases than we had throughout the entire period of last year. Now, the critical thing to realize, it's not spreading per se, but we're having more cases in a specific geographical location. So 85% of all our cases in 3 states, Edo, Ondo, and Ebonyi states. And those 3 states also form the heart of the response being mounted by NCDC, the federal government, state governments, and partners.
And so far so good. What has been the the response from the NCDC? How have you been able to curtail it?
So you see, the thing with Lassa fever is there's no magic bullet. So the host The multi-marmot rat is endemic in our society. So there will be continuous transmission as long as we expose our foodstuff to these rats and their excreta. So we've really intensified messaging, especially in the rural areas around these 3 states. We have rapid response teams supporting the state governments in Edo, Ondo, and Ebonyi to get to the villages, to get to the local governments most affected, where most of the cases are coming from. And really to use local messaging and whatever means at our disposal to make sure they get the right messages across. To add, actually, I think that in all of this, there are a few good news stories. The centers like the Federal Medical Center or Irua Specialist Teaching Hospital that have really risen to the challenge. With our support and support of a few other partners, we've really scaled up the capacity in these centers to manage cases. We're growing our expertise in doing that. And what we've begun to see over the last few weeks is a reduction in the case fatality ratio, i.e. the number of people that die from the disease out of those that actually get the disease is actually decreasing, especially as people are now coming and presenting a little bit earlier. So I think the real message we have for Nigerians is, yes, we have a bad outbreak on our hands, but yes, too, we have mounted a very strong response, not just from the federal government, but from the 3 states involved and our partners specifically, and particularly WHO. And we will keep working hard until we get this outbreak under control.
You know, the irony of all of this is that in as much as you're intensifying, the response efforts, you keep on, discovering more and more, of these cases in some of the states that, initially you don't even have, a recorded case. But however, our health facilities, are they well equipped enough to provide treatments?
So you see that there are 2 things. The first thing, even before we could get to the stage of treatment, is diagnosis. So what we have done is increase our diagnostic capacity. So the test for Lassa is not a very easy test to do. There are only 3 labs in the country that can do that. There were 2 until recently. We've just increased that to 3. Our goal is to get it to 6 across the country so that we can have a functional molecular lab in every geopolitical zone in the country. But it's a slow process because it's not just about equipment. Capacity is a very complicated test to do. But however, the key message we have for health professionals actually is the diagnosis is critical. And the first path to making that diagnosis is once a patient comes to you with a febrile illness, to make sure you do a test for malaria.
What does that supposed to mean?
A fever.
Yeah. Now, okay.
Yeah, if you come to a doctor with a fever, very often we treat patients with a presumptive diagnosis of malaria. The consequence of that is if it's not malaria, it delays the time to care if it was something bad like Lassa. So there is a very cheap and effective test for malaria now. So what we're encouraging every doctor to do, test for malaria. If it's malaria, go on and treat the patient. If it's not malaria, then start looking for something else, and that could be Lassa. But if you don't start on that trajectory and just treat without testing, and then wait for 2 weeks until treatment fails, and you increase the likelihood of losing that patient because it then presents very late for treatment of Lassa fever.
Okay, well, from the reports that we got today as well, the other outbreaks like meningitis and whooping cough, what's your response? How are you responding to that?
You see, meningitis is is the time of the year. The first 3-4 months of the year, every year we have this increase in cases of meningitis. Until we'll have an effective vaccine which to offer, we probably will continue to see it across the meningitis belt. However, more than ever before this year, we've been better prepared. We've been able to respond rapidly. We are currently responding in both Katsina and Niger states where there's few cases, and we've seen much fewer cases and much fewer consequences, e.g. mortality, than we saw last year. Last year we had a huge outbreak of meningitis around this time, and this year we've really prepared a lot better. But you see, we have 200 million people living in a space that's not increasing. So by simple first principles, the level of exposure to the viruses and bacteria living around us will keep increasing. So our work is a thankless one. We have to keep fighting, trying to keep ahead of viruses and transmission, but there are no magic bullets to this, and it requires a continuous, consistent effort by players across the sector.
Exactly, that's my next question. How much support are you getting from both the government of Nigeria and international partners?
Yeah, you see, just 3 weeks ago, the Honorable Minister of Health called an emergency National Council of Health meeting where we called all the commissioners of health in Nigeria together to Abuja here. And really his call was for all of us to put hands together. This is not something, health is on the concurrent list in Nigeria. It means that every level of government has a responsibility of investing in health. You see, we're a complex country, there are many demands on resources. We have huge infrastructure needs, security, and so a lot of times health doesn't really come up high enough on the agenda of our leaders. So we have been pushing, the Honorable Minister has been pushing for all of us to put something in the collective pool with which we can then fight some of these diseases and protect the lives of our people. Because without life, none of us will be in a position to talk about light, electricity, and security, and all those other things that bother us.
Now, lastly, again, what are those symptoms to look out for in case of Lassa fever or meningitis, for instance?
You see, the critical thing with all these diseases is the start, like every other disease that causes fever. So the biggest risk is for us to take for granted that child that comes to you with a fever. So what we're advising everyone, yes, malaria is the most common cause of fever in the environment, and in children sometimes pneumonia, but it's important for healthcare workers to think about the other causes, especially if the first steps have failed and the fever persists. And with both Lassa and meningitis, your chances of survival are really increased the earlier you present to a health facility and get into the care pathway.
So fever for Lassa fever, but what about meningitis? Are they interconnected?
So they all start with fever. What differentiates them a little bit, both for Lassa, once you find any features of bleeding from any of your orifices, then you have to immediately start thinking about Lassa. For meningitis, we talk about neck stiffness and sensitivity to sunlight specifically. Those are telltale signs of meningitis.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chikwe Eyikwazu. Thank you very much for your thoughts, and we just hope that as time goes on, as you intensify efforts in curbing this menace, definitely we'll get to a stage whereby we'll not be talking about Lassa fever again in Nigeria.
Thanks, Rotimi. I think Nigerians can rest assured that we're doing our very best, and we will not stop until we get the outbreak under control.
Thank you very much. And of course, moving on to other stories now, the House of Representatives has unanimously passed a vote of no confidence in the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, and his Minister of State, Bawa Buhari, and the sole administrator of Ajaokuta Steel Company. Both ministers shunned the sectoral debates on the steel sector scheduled today to find solutions to the troubled Ajaokuta steel plants. The motion on no confidence vote was moved by the leader of the House, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila. You're watching Newsnight from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We are heading for a short break now, but do stay with us. Plenty more still ahead when we return.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. There's a special breed of achievers out there that are called tomorrow's people, the highly creative ones who live in the future. They imagine what will be and strive to make it happen. They are bold. They refuse to wait for the future. Tomorrow bends and conforms to their ideas. At Access Bank, we share the same sentiments. We've been able to grow our bank to become a leading player in Nigeria with a strong presence across the continent, adopting best practice in everything we do. Our mantra for success is simple: speed, service, and security. Those who shape tomorrow, strive for, and demand perfection. At Access Bank, our service culture of speedy response and drive for excellence is the blueprint for creating customer experiences that will echo for generations. Come, let's work together and take tomorrow.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Then think Zenith, one of the biggest in Nigeria, with assets over $16 billion, listed among the 20 most influential brands in the world, and winner of Best Bank in Corporate Governance. The most customer-focused bank in Nigeria, a success built on 3 foundations, dedicated to people, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
As a fashion writer, I know how quickly trends are created and changed. In business, it's no different. To stay ahead, I needed a plan flexible enough to meet my changing communication needs. More Business 2.0 didn't just give me voice and data in one package. I got a whole lot more. With More Business, setting up my website was no problem. But I'm not just a fashion writer. I also own a home decor store before I decided to open an accessory store. With my customized More Business plan, managing my staff's communication is easy. No matter how frequently they come, oh, they go. With 9 Mobile's new online self-service this week, I could adapt my plans to include this.
From 2,000 Naira, choose a business bundle, customize your staff's voice and data lines, and enjoy a variety of add-on business services. Dial *200 *5# now to subscribe. More Business.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
You're watching Newsnight here on Arise News. My name is Rotimi Michael Kadi in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Now joining me is Honorable Alasan Ado Dogowa, the Chief Whip of the House of Representatives, on the story we promoted earlier that the House of Representatives earlier today passed the vote of no confidence on the Minister of Mineral Resources and the Minister of State as well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so
Alasan.
much. Thank you. It's my pleasure being
Now,
with you.
tell us exactly, why did the House of Representatives pass the vote of no confidence on the Minister of Mineral Resources, Dr. Kadi Fahimi?
I think to start with, let me just first of all say it was something that was born out of a personal or a private visit by the Honorable Speaker to the Ajakuta steel industry. He personally wanted to be there. Of course, that was informed by a lot of mixed reactions, a lot of stories and information he might have gathered at a personal level. And as a patriotic Nigerian and somebody who is really committed to provide that leadership that is unfortunately lacking in the system now, the Speaker wanted to be there and see things for himself. And at the end of the day, what I can now competently tell you that the Speaker went only to meet what one can appropriately call a national embarrassment, national scandal. We are sitting on a gold mine, sitting on gold, sitting on a lot of food, and we are still crying out for hunger. And it is on that basis the Speaker decided to now come and discuss with the leadership of the House of Representatives, of which I am one. At the end of our discussions, we felt we could have no other way than really to wade into the matter. And we discussed, after consultation with very important and critical members of the House of Representatives, especially those who came from the north central part of the country, Kogi State, to be very specific. And at the end, we decided now to come up with this initiative, of course, informed by the relevant sections of the Constitution, which has given us the powers to summon whoever is in authority.
Was it summoned?
Summon and invitation is all the same. It is a matter of nomenclature. Summon, invited, you are asked to come, is still the same thing.
How many times?
The most important thing is that this man was invited to come and engage with the House of Representatives, an institution that we can call the House of the Nigerian people. And for whatever reasons, he decided not to come. And because of the so much importance and significance we have attached to this quagmire, this what we can competently call scandal, we decided to go on. We wanted to, in the first place, give him what we call a fair hearing. We have a lot of information surrounding it, but we don't want to just lie or rely on peddled information or information on the street. So we now wanted, as a parliament, to invite him, and also decided to go a step further and invited civil society people who are really experienced in the field of steel and mine sector. Invited them, experienced people, resource people, came and gave us their own presentations. And in the course of doing what we did today, my brother, we have gotten a lot of revelations, shocking revelations. These revelations are not only shocking, they are demoralizing. And if we go ahead to find anything beyond this, whatever crosses the red line, my brother, I want to tell you, as members representing the interest of our constituents, which of course constitute the over 180 million Nigerians, then the House of Reps will not take that lightly.
So what's the implication?
The crux of the matter, was the fact that they were invited under Section 80 of the Constitution, which has empowered us to invite even the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, invited to come and let us know what is actually the position from the perspective of government. Because I want to believe the minister is acting in the capacity of the president, being a presidential appointee.
Was there any reason why he couldn't attend, the sitting?
Of course, in their usual manner, they will want to adduce some reasons, but these were reasons that we felt were institutionally not cogent enough to have allowed that circumstances to hold. And at the end of the day, we felt this minister should be sanctioned. And we are this sanction we have passed on him is not just by way of the word of mouth or the mere vote of no confidence you may likely interpret as a media man. It is going quite beyond that. Beyond that, in the sense that the House will cease to have any interface or any relationship with the institution of this ministry as long as these people remain in charge of the ministry. Because what they have done is not only a contempt to the parliament, it's a contempt to the generality of the population of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because what is there in the House of Reps, apparently, is not Ado Dogwa and is not Femi Bajabiamila. It is not even about Dogara, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. What is there is the sanctity of the collectivity of the Nigerian people that are there representing Nigerian people. And whoever dare to contempt these people is contempting the interests of the Nigerian nation as a federation, and that we cannot take for granted. One important thing Nigerians must note, even the issue of having a prosty relationship with Mr. President, this issue of friction here and there that you may come across, the Senate having problem with the President, House of Reps having problem with Mr. President, has got nothing to do with the person of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as it were.
But the ministers are representatives of the President.
Of course they are. But
so whatever you do to the minister, indirectly you're doing it to the President.
Directly or indirectly, let me put it clear. The fact is that it now goes to confirm to you, Mr. President, with all the wisdom bestowed in him, with all the vision and the mission he has for what we want to now achieve as a new Nigeria, he is unfortunately misrepresented by people acting in his capacity. And all these problems were caused by this kind of ministers. This is not the first time the House has summoned a minister or a relevant head of an agency and decided to undermine the House of Representatives or the Senate, as the case may be. And I want to tell you, as long as ministers of this nature will continue to relate with the National Assembly as an institution in this manner, I would like to tell you with all sense of responsibility that it will never augur well between the House, between the National Assembly and the executive arm of government.
Now that's,
and I want to say with all sense of clarity that by implication of what we did now, acting in the capacity, just like the minister was acting in the capacity of the president, we were also acting in the capacity of the Nigerians electorate, who were responsible for electing Mr. President as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are acting in their own capacity. We represented your humble self. We represented the all other acclaimed 180 million Nigerians. So what we did was like we were acting in the capacity of the nationhood, the nation we serve, Nigeria. And I want to tell you, we have that sanctity. The mandate, as far as democracy is concerned, the overwhelming mandate undoubted mandate of any federation resides in the peoples of that country.
Now, if you claim that you represent the interest of the Nigerian people and you're sanctioning the Minister of Mineral Resources, one of the very critical sectors in the country, that means that the budget that is accrued to that ministry would not be passed, you know, by the National Assembly if the House of Representatives and the Senate have a harmonized position. Then at the end of the day, is the Nigerian people that will still suffer, the same people that you say you represent?
Nigerian people are still suffering with the budget or no budget as it is today, based on the circumstances we found on the ground. Even though I wouldn't want to preempt the investigative committee that is going to be set up, I have to be a little bit limited to the fact that there is a committee to be set up. Some of my pronouncements, also statements, have to be guided in the first place, because at the end of the day, I may likely undermine this investigative process. But one thing that I must put clear and straightforward is the fact that as it is today, we have found a lot of presumed decadence, nonchalance, and a lack of direction, lack of leadership, and what we now call an insensitive ministry as far as the Nigerian government is concerned. So it's like it's the same. Whether we are stopping activity or relating with the ministry or not, already the ministry, as represented by the so-called two ministers, is like is acting in an inactive capacity. What they are doing is not in any way bearing or making or impacting positively.
It does appear that it's not just the Minister of
like
Mineral Resources that is undermining your authority.
What?
Are the ministers actually undermining the oversight functions of the National Assembly?
I think we need to be very specific, because the topic under discussion is also specific. My discourse with you is now in respect to this particular ministry. There may be other cases. Sometimes ministers, sometimes directors or head of parastatals of government. Few cases. But of course, some of these cases were heard and granted. Maybe courtesy gave it back to them that we now overlooked. But it's like it has come to an extent that the House of Representatives as an institution will no longer tolerate this kind of legislative contempt, because it will amount to undermining our constitutional mandate to operate as representatives of our own people. So many things have happened. We have overlooked so many of these things. Like I've just said, members of the National Assembly, especially the leadership, under the able leadership of the Speaker, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, we have for long been tolerating a lot of things. And we share in common a lot of vision and mission of Mr. President, believing in his capacity and in his sincerity of purpose to bring and create a new Nigeria. But here we are, unfortunately, a minister, an appointee who was not even at the polling unit when Mr. President was elected, who did not know how we came about delivering about 1.8 million votes from my state, Kano. Is now coming to undermine the mandate of the House. This cannot be acceptable.
All right, so how do we
it's not like we're applying this decision. It's not like we're applying this thing to all other ministers or all other ministries. Even if it has happened, those things that have happened were overlooked.
Okay,
but
so
we have
how
come to
do
a
we
stage
find
when coincidentally with this Ministry of Mines and Ministry of Mines and the insensitivity of these two ministers, we now have to call a spade a spade.
Okay,
and like so members have commented, it's like we're now trying to draw the button. It's now left for Mr. President to believe the fact that we have now come to a stage when the President will have to now choose between partnering with the National Assembly or partnering with kangaroo ministers who are not sensitive to the plight of the people of Nigeria.
Well, now, how do we find common ground between the presidency and the National Assembly? It does appear that
it's not about let me tell you, don't even call it presidency and the National Assembly. Presidency, as far as I'm concerned, is not even recognized in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay.
What is recognized is the executive arm of government, headed by Mr. President.
Let's put it in the right term.
When you now say presidency, it's like you are implying Mr. President. And if I must use the word presidency, I would want to tell you in this case that the presidency is one different thing. The ministers, who are also some elements of the executive arm of government, and they are relating with us in this manner, is also another thing. And I will want to now believe that it's now left for what you call the presidency. When you now say the presidency, means the officialdom of Mr. President, to begin to see reasons in partnering with people who have the mandate of the people. Mr. President is a product of election. So we have a lot of common grounds, like you're saying. But these are ministers who most of them were appointed maybe as technocrats. Most of them just came on board based on one reason or the other. Mr. President must have to find in common with the members of the National Assembly, because we all came through elective process. So we are absolutely one. The presidency and the National Assembly are one thing. But unfortunately, we now have something that you can call a cog in the wheel of Nigeria's democracy, which we must have to work and clean up.
Now, let's quickly take a listen to what transpired in the House today, and I want to get your reaction to that.
Go ahead.
This country has been sold, but they've not completed the sale. But wanting to sell Ajaokuta in the name of concessioning means this country would have been finished. And that is, as far as we are concerned, as far as all the legislators are concerned, Ajaokuta is even much more than the petroleum industry, because of the level of, the level of employment. It is still, it is still that holds the country. Your kitchen, medical equipment, rail lines. Imagine that some weeks ago, 6.7 billion was supposed to be earmarked for the rail line. Where are we going to get this steel from? Foreign company. And then all we needed is just to get about $500 and something million to revive this company, which was about 98% complete, according to what the revelation this lady gave.
Any private sector, any private player, whoever feels he has the capacity, the financial capability, and technicalities to operate a steel plant is very free to do so. Sir, you said you would need $100 million or $300 million. We have enough land in Nigeria, and we can give you one to start your steel plant. But Ajaokuta, as it stands today, is not of commercial concern. It's a political and economic play. Nigerian today here becomes a steel expert, a metallurgist at that. If you do not have the political will and the decision from your heart, a patriotic movement, and leaders in place that will have this idea and share same vision, Ajaokuta will not move.
The invitation that has not been honored by either of the ministers is concept number 2. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this presentation gives ample opportunity for fair hearing under our Constitution. There have been allegations, and you alluded to say the same in your subsequent reply. There have been allegations, dirty allegations. But the opportunity to clear the air so that we can move forward was made available today.
And of course, that was House Leader Femi Gbajabiamila, who of course led other House of Representative members to condemn the non-appearance of the Minister of Mines and Steel. And I still have Honorable Alassane Ado Dogoa, the Chief Whip of the House of Representatives and of the All Progressives Congress. Thank you very much. Your reaction as our last take as we close this conversation. So moving forward, what definitely will happen to these ministers?
I think I may not be hasty to tell you what will actually happen, but this is what has happened so far. The House has resolved to condemn this ministry and the ministers involved. The House has also agreed and resolved unanimously, not even a single decent voice, unanimously. The APC was not on the floor of the House today. The PDP was also not in attendance. The ABGA was also not in attendance. What was in attendance on the floor of the House of Representatives was that patriotic commitment of Nigerian representatives. So we all acted as Nigerians. This is a serious economic miss. We are taking this matter so critical. We look at it with every sense of seriousness. A situation whereby something was established in the past 36 years. And in the last 36 years, this infrastructure, this enormous and huge infrastructure, economic and technological infrastructure, was 98%. And from then till now, 36 years later, we could not complete the 2% to put this thing to service.
So do you also consider that these ministers may not really have the financial
this is something that you can
support?
call the responsibility of successive governments. These ministers may not necessarily be 100% responsible, but the fact remains that these people have reneged in their responsibility as appointees of an elected government. They have reneged in their responsibilities as being sensitive people, that people should have been sensitive to the plight of Nigerians. Revelations will come and bring out all those things. That is why I said I don't want to go too much, because I wouldn't want to undermine or preempt the activity of the. I may likely, by the leave of the speaker, be the chairman of this committee. By the leave of the speaker. I was not consulted anyway. Yeah. So I wouldn't want a situation whereby I'm now trying to preempt the activity of a committee that I'm likely to be the leader or the chairman of that committee. All I want to say competently and authoritatively that this is the far we have gone, and the House has every commitment. The resilience is there. The sense of concern and the sense of responsibility is also there amongst the generality of members of the House of Representatives. We must bring this thing to a logical conclusion. We must find reasons why we are running hungry and we have a lot of food in our stores. I don't see reasons why a situation whereby you put this thing to service. It has been clearly and professionally confirmed to us that when this thing is put to service or put to operations, it will immediately, within 24 hours of commencement of operation, it will employ 20,000 Nigerians, professional Nigerians. It will also employ other buy employees. You know, when you have a setup like this, other buy employees will come. Yeah. People who will incidentally be contractors and other things. And other things. This is something that will directly go and hit very positively on our foreign reserve. Look at the much money we have been sinking into importation of steel. That will be stopped. We will now stop to be importers of steel. We will now be exporting. Our foreign reserve will
increase as a result of that.
Will definitely be positively impacted upon. And the teaming use that will be employed. The GDP also will rise drastically, astronomically. Your pocket will change. My own pocket will also change. So for us to take this thing lightly, that will never happen. This we will take to the logical conclusion, and I assure you this committee, when put in place, will look at these things with all sense of patriotism. And whoever is found guilty, or whoever is found wanting, from now to the first day they started Ajakuta, will be brought to the fore. At least for Nigerians to know these are the people who are not patriotic enough and wouldn't want Nigeria to progress. That is why I'm telling you the ministers were only
appendages of the president.
They were only offensive because they refused to attend to a parliamentary session when they were invited. But we now cannot just call them outrightly that they're the culprit. So it was like two things were involved. Honorable. These people on one hand refused to honor the House of the people. Then on the other hand, the problem we have at hand is something that could be called generic problem. It started long ago. I hope you would not be part of it.
Hopefully I will not be part of it.
I hope in the course of investigation you would not be found wanted. And I also pray for myself that I wouldn't be found wanted.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Alassane Adodogoa, the Chief Whip of the National of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much for coming on Newsnight. And of course, moving on to other stories now, the federal government is ready to prosecute name and shame tax evaders. That will be coming up after the break. Do stay with us.
As a fashion writer, I know how quickly trends are created and changed. In business, it's no different. To stay ahead, I needed a plan flexible enough to meet my changing communication needs. More Business 2.0 didn't just give me voice and data in one package. I got a whole lot more. With More Business, setting up my website was no problem. But I'm not just a fashion writer. I also own a home decor store before I decided to open an accessory store. With my customized More Business plan, managing my staff's communication is easy. No matter how frequently they come, oh, they go. With 9 Mobile's new online self-service this week, I could adapt my plans to include this.
From 2,000 Naira, choose a business bundle, customize your staff's voice and data lines, and enjoy a variety of add-on business services. Dial *200*5# now to subscribe. More Business.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
You're watching Newsnight with me, Michael Kelly. And now to more news. The federal government is ready to prosecute name and shame tax evaders that failed to utilize the tax amnesty program, the voluntary assets and income declaration scheme, VADES, to regularize their tax profiles. The Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, declared earlier today. And Mrs. Adeosun stated that the federal government had the political will to prosecute tax evaders once the tax amnesty program was over by March 31st, 2018. She said, and I quote, "The federal government has the political will and data to go after tax evaders who fail to take advantage of the tax amnesty program, while many Nigerians cannot explain their lifestyles or match their lifestyles, assets and income with their tax payments. We will close VADES at the expiration of the program on March the 31st, 2018. And once the program is closed, we will name and shame and also prosecute tax evaders," end of quote. On data sharing with foreign countries, the minister noted that the information sourced would strictly be used for tax purposes. Well, there's crisis in Lagos State chapter of the All Progressives Congress, APC, where loyalists of APC national leader Bola Tinubu are leading a new group called the Broom United Movement, BUM. The splinter group also held an inaugural meeting where it accused the leadership of the party in Lagos State of engaging in illegality, manipulation and marginalization against members. The convener of the Broom United Movement, Mr. Faoud Oki, warned that unless genuine reconciliation is allowed to take place, the party may be heading for a crisis and a disaster in an election year. Oki, a former Director General of ex-governors Bola Tinubu and Babatunde Fashola, as well as incumbents Akinwumi Ambode's campaign organizations, has said the party suffers from low organizational capacity and lack of internal democracy. What split comes on the heels of Tinubu's assignment as the head of the Reconciliation Committee of the party. The suspended Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Timi Frank, says the extension of the tenure of John Odigio-Oyegun-led National Working Committee implies lack of confidence in the Tinubu Reconciliatory Panel. In his words, the tenure elongation clearly shows that the party is going nowhere beyond 2019. And because if they didn't believe in Tinubu's Reconciliatory Panel, why did they set it up at all? He also alleged that the APC is discriminating against new People's Democratic Party members who helped form the party. Frank, who is estranged from the mainstream of the NWC, said that the party has proved to the world that it does not respect even its own laid down rules and guidelines, which he said does not give room for such extension. Frank described the tenure elongation as laughable, saying that it has shown that the main opposition, People's Democratic Party, PDP, is far better than APC when it comes to internal democracy. However, APC National Chairman John Odigio-Oyegun was quick to rebuff the claim, saying that the party did not expect everyone to tag along with the decision of the National Executive Committee. According to him, people are entitled to support any cause they believe in. In the meantime, Governor Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State has said that rascal members within the APC will soon be wiped out reacting to the presidential assignment given to the party's national leader, Bola Tinubu, to reconcile aggrieved members. El-Rufai said, "We have had people that are unhappy. There are many people that are very unhappy as well. Some of them legitimately. There are some disgruntled people that are unhappy without basis. And we also have rascals and troublemakers who think politics is rascality, and to each one there is a different solution." He continued, "They do rebel so that you will negotiate with them. Well, you can keep negotiating depending on the level of rascality. There are people like that. Those ones, there is no solution. Well, they will remain in opposition until you find a way to annihilate them politically." Arise News analyst Tony Amadi joins me now to discuss the developing stories within the All Progressives Congress. Tony, are you surprised that there are dissenting voices within the APC?
Not at all. It has always been predicted. It's been expected, because when you bottle up champagne and it blows out, that's what is happening. A bottled crisis has blown out in the APC, and there is no room for it to cool down. Not even with a giant like Tinubu's settlement group. They cannot stop it, because the pillars of the amalgamation were neglected immediately they achieved the power in 2015. Up till now, many of them who spent a lot of money, spent a lot of energy to create the APC, to do everything for them, they were neglected. Nothing happened. They just swept them aside. So this is time for ensuring that, you know, they're just ready to split the party. That's what is going on right now.
And what about the tenure elongation of the National Working Committee of the party? What's the basis? Why do you have, that internal democracy? Why is it lacking within the APC? Because I think basically, why you have this faction here and there, it's just because they felt that the John Odigo-Oyegun-led, National Working Committee has not really delivered in the past 2 years.
You see, the president had a great idea. Go and set up the congresses. That's what he wanted. But they realized that they cannot do it without changing the constitution. And the way they want to do the constitution is
at the National Convention.
Yes. So they don't want to wait till National Convention, because by then this crisis would have blown everybody apart. That is the point they are going through now. And like Frank said, it's laughable what they have done. Elongate tenure for people who have not done much over the past 2-3 years. Now you want to elongate their what have they been doing? They were supposed to have done at least 2 conventions in the past, during which, if they wanted to extend, they would have done. Now there's no time for it, and it's even illegal, because I understand some people might be going to court over this issue.
Now, we've seen the national leader of the party, Bola Tinubu, some weeks ago, writing an open letter, so to speak, to the chairman of the party, saying that he's directly or indirectly undermining his mission to reconcile aggrieved members of the party. Now we have also the Governors Forum of the APC coming together to say that the vote of confidence passed on the chairman is absolutely on the papers. Is not is not one of the things that you have to take seriously. Basically, because it's only the National Convention of the party that do have that authority to cement the, whether you call it tenure elongation of the NWC or maybe other nomenclature you may want to use for it.
You see, they know that this is not right, what is being done. Even the leader of the Northern Governors Forum, the governor of Zamfara State, came out that very night, issued a statement to say that elongation was totally illegal. You could not elongate what is not needed at this time. He expected that anything done without the national convention is illegal, and that is the truth. It's in their own constitution. So what the Oyegun group is saying, they're just trying to pepper the cracks, and it's a very deep crack that even if you buy the whole of Dangote cement, it cannot.
It cannot. So perhaps if this kind of developments, continue, beyond 2018, we might just be seeing implosion, and it may affect the party indirectly. Thank you very much, Tony.
Is that the president may not be able to decide in time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your analysis on that. And of course, moving on to other stories now, suspected kidnappers abducted the wife and the child of a reporter with Voice of America in Kaduna State. The abductors also killed a member and staff of the Federal Road Safety Corps, FRSC, who rushed to help the victims. The reporter, Malam Nasir Beninyero, said that the abductors, who were about 30 in number, attacked his residence in Beninyero near Kaduna State. Well, today, President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has assured the people of South Africa that a transfer of land from the country's white minority to the black majority will be handled without damaging the economy, and that there will be no smash and grab. Ramaphosa has appealed for calm, saying that land transfers must be managed through dialogue. As the issue promises to be a debate ahead of elections in 2019, he has made it clear that this is a question that will continue to be handled with care and responsibility. Much of South Africa's economy is currently controlled by the white minority, stirring anger among blacks who hope for a better life after apartheid. However, the government wants to avoid the example of neighboring Zimbabwe's chaotic land seizures under former leader Robert Mugabe that contributed to the country's economic deterioration. Mysterious deaths of foreigners and locals has caused fears of insecurity in Uganda. In the past 4 months, Europeans have been found dead in the East African country. And earlier this week, the body of a young local woman was found dumped along a highway after the kidnapper asked her family to pay $1 million. The president, Yoweri Museveni, has had to weigh in as these cases has shocked many in Uganda, where security is often cited as one of its strengths. Museveni on Wednesday called for the collection of the DNA records of everybody in the bid to stem the crime rate, and is vowing to catch the young women's killers. She also said that it will not allow anybody to interfere with the freedom of our young people. Now let's take a look at business news now. To Angola, where state-owned company Sanogo is trying to sell stakes in its oil blocks as it seeks to recover from fall in oil prices. Making the announcement in the capital, Luanda, the new chairman extended a general invitation to the oil industry to consider its concessions. While the move is aimed at attempting to reduce debts and boost revenue. The company recently came under fire from international partners for delays in approving projects. This led to the removal of its former chairman and the country's richest woman, Isabel dos Santos. To entertainment news now, where a missing Nigerian masterpiece found in the modest North London flat is sold for more than £1 million at auction. Ben Awonwa's 1974's painting of Ife Princess Adetutu Ademuloyi, known as Tutu, became a symbol of reconciliation after the country's Biafra conflict. But the painting, expected to fetch £300,000 and sold for £1,205,000, a record for a modern Nigerian artist. Bon Ahmed's director of Modern African Arts, Gilles Papiet, discovered the painting after he was invited to appraise artworks at the modern North London flat. Mr. Papiet said that he was regularly asked to look at versions of Tutu which turned out to be copies. A terrorist attack in Kenya inspired a short film that is in the vying for an Academy Award. The Watu Wote, which means all of us in Swahili, depicts the true story of an Al-Shabaab extremist assaults on a bus in northern Kenya just before Christmas in 2015. Muslim passengers helped to save the lives of Christian passengers by refusing to separate into groups. German film students read about the attack and decided to tell the story for its message of humanity and solidarity. Director Katjan Banrath called the Oscar nomination surreal, and most of the talents in the film are first-time actors.
بس كأنك السود التينا ربع قال لهم الصبح إنك السود
Wewe ulikuwa na mama Mkristo ako wapi? Ako wapi? Ako wapi? Ndio mafundisho ya Qur'ani.
You've been watching Newsnight here on Arise News with me, Rotimi Michael Kade in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Please keep it here on the channel. But for now, from me and the entire team, it's good night.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What